question is number 12 in the name of Deputy Clare Daly.
Minister, you made the point a couple of times earlier that never before was there an authority to deal with noise at the airport. This, of course, is a consequence of an EU directive rather than anything the government has done. But the competent authority that you're setting up as part of the IAA, I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but it is a different model than being adopted by other jurisdictions who seem to be operating on the basis of maybe a role for the local authority, the equivalent of the EPA, or an entirely separate new body. I'm wondering why there hasn't been a more demonstrably independent body to deal with this critical issue.
Thank you. The new EU Regulation 598 stipulates that competent authorities must be independent of any organisation which could be affected by noise-related measures at an airport. But it specifically allows for that independence to be achieved through a functional separation model. This option for Member States in implementing the EU regulation is a recognition of the differing administrative and institutional systems already in place across the EU. A compulsory one-size-fits-all approach would not be appropriate and inevitably result in the necessity for various EU member states to establish new entities with suboptimal use of existing resources and entities. The Irish Aviation Authority will be required to conduct its noise-related regulatory activities in strict conformity with the requirement for independence. As I have previously advised this House, it is envisaged that the legislation currently in preparation in my department, in consultation with the AG's office, will specifically require the establishment of a functionally separate unit within the IAA. The IAA has considerable experience of operating a functional separation model. It has been operating that model since 2004 in relation to safety oversight of air navigation service providers under the suite of EU legislation concerning the single European sky. The IAA is also responsible for safety regulation of Irish civil aviation generally, including airports. This experience of the functional separation model will inform the establishment of the required separate unit for airport noise management. The other main reason for selecting the IAA under a functional separation model for airport noise management in Ireland is that it responds well to the requirement for aviation expertise in order to effectively implement the new EU regulation. The IAA has much expertise and knowledge of aircraft technology, as well as airport and air navigation operations, which are considered essential to fulfil the various regulatory tasks satisfactorily. Although no one entity in Ireland possesses the entire range of expertise and knowledge to implement internally all elements of the ICAO balanced approach, given the particular relevance of aviation expertise, it was considered that the IAA was best placed to discharge the regulatory responsibilities involved.
Thank you, Minister.
Personally, I think that the IAA is a better option than the DAA or the local authority in the area. The fact that a competent body separate to the IAA has been established is also beneficial, but it has to be seen to be entirely independent, and the fact that this organisation is funded out of aircraft activity is a problem. And the reason why it's a problem is that you have said, and everybody knows, that this new body is going to have the power, without recourse to anybody, to tamper with the existing conditions which restrict nighttime activity in relation to the second runway, and that's with regard to the runway not being used for take-off and landing between 11 o'clock at night and 7 in the morning, and not exceeding a number of 68 flights per night. Now, this, if it's lifted, is going to have a massive negative impact on people in the area. I would imagine that people are going to be utterly terrified to hear your answers to the earlier questions, where you said that that vital change may occur without recourse to this House. Now, that's in contradiction to previous answers you've given to parliamentary questions that I've tabled about the new competent authority, and I'd really like you to be very clear on this. Is this going to be done up by a statutory instrument by you or legislation voted upon by the deputies of this House?
Well, I'd like to reassure the Deputy on several counts here. First of all, on the issue of whether it's going to be discussed by this House or whether it's going to be a statutory instrument or primary legislation. It is expected that we will have a result of this by the end of the year, if statutory instrument is the only course going forward. If it is necessary, and we are in negotiation and talks with the Attorney General's Office to introduce primary legislation, it will be done early in the year in this House. I have absolutely no problem, whichever course that happens, in bringing this to an Oireachtas committee, the Joint Committee on Transport, or joining in and debate in this House, which private members can bring in at all. I think it should be debated in this House. I have no problem whatsoever with that. But we're not going to introduce primary legislation if it's not necessary. That would be absurd.
Thank you, Minister.
That would just be a crazy course to take. But we will do it by statutory instrument if that's possible.
Thank you, Minister. Sorry, time is up. I know.
Written answers previously that this would require legislation, and the Minister now talking about a statutory instrument.
I can't let the Minister answer. Time is already up. We move on to topic